Thank you everyone for joining us for our National Consumer Protection Week presentation on warranties and guarantees. My name is Catherine Devanney. I've been a Deputy Attorney General in the DOJ's Consumer Protection Unit since September 2020. Before that, I was a Deputy Attorney General in the Investor Protection Unit. I currently focus on Delaware-specific and multi-state consumer protection investigations, primarily in the financial services and privacy sectors. I'm joined today by our panelists, Brian Eng, Brian Canfield, and Pat Malone. Brian Eng is a Deputy Attorney General and the Delaware Department of Justice's Manufactured Housing Ombudsperson and the head of the Consumer Mediation Unit. Prior to joining the DOJ in 2019, Brian served as the Managing Attorney for the Disabilities Law Program at Community Legal Aid Society, Inc., with a practice focused on disability rights and manufactured housing. Brian is a graduate of the Widener University Delaware Law School and the University of Delaware. Brian Canfield is a Deputy Attorney General in the Consumer Protection Unit, which he joined upon graduating from law school. During law school, Brian spent his summers interning with the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Delaware Department of Justice in the Civil and Fraud divisions. And finally, we have Pat Malone. Pat Malone is a special investigator assigned to the Consumer Protection Unit. He was previously a police officer with the Newcastle County Police, retiring in 2019 with the rank of lieutenant. Special Investigator Malone is currently assigned to investigate debt management complaints as well as the daily consumer fraud complaints that come into the DOJ. So with that, let's get started. Brian Eng, if you could pull up our slides, please. All right, so I think a good place to start is with what is a warranty. Brian Canfield, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, a warranty is basically just an express or implied promise from the seller to the buyer about the goods or services being sold. And like I said, there's two types of warranties broadly, express warranties and implied warranties. And an express warranty is a statement or a promise made by the seller to the buyer that helps induce the buyer into purchasing the good. So an example of this would be if a car dealer promises that a car will get 40 miles per gallon, that is a warranty that that car will get 40 miles per gallon. And if it gets less than that, that would be a breach of the express warranty. There are also implied warranties, and these are obligations that are imposed by law, even when there has been no explicit or express promise made by the seller. And there are a few different types of implied warranties. I'll go over some of the important ones. One is the implied warranty of merchantability. And this is a promise that the goods being sold are fit for the ordinary purpose for which those goods are being sold. So an example of this would be if you buy a cell phone, it must be able to make calls, must be able to send texts. And if not, it would be a breach of the warranty of merchantability. There is one requirement here that the merchant is a seller, which means that they basically they regularly sell those goods that are being sold. So if you buy from Apple or Verizon, they would be merchants in that case. If you're buying from someone who's never sold a cell phone and they're just selling, their old iPhone, they would not be a merchant and would not be subject to the implied warranty of merchantability. Another implied warranty is the warranty of title. And this warrants that title is good and there's no liens or encumbrances against the title. So for example, if you're buying a car and they never got title to it, that would be a breach of the implied warranty of title. It's important to note that warranties can be disclaimed, both implied and express warranties, although it is easier to disclaim implied warranties. There are a few ways in which implied warranties can be disclaimed. One that we should highlight that we see often is when goods are sold as is or using language such as is or without faults. And this means that you take the good as it is and there's no implied warranty subject to the sale. Express warranties, like I said, are harder to disclaim, but it is not impossible. And something that we sometimes see, and something to look out for is something called a merger or integration clause. And this basically is a clause that says what's in the written contract is the complete agreement. And any representations, either verbal or written, that are made prior to the signing of the contract are not binding against the seller. In that case, courts will likely find that the express warranty has been disclaimed.
Okay, that's a really helpful background. Thank you, Brian. So with that in mind, Brian Eng, as head of Consumer Mediation Unit, could you tell us a little bit about the types of warranty complaints that we see and sort of how everything that Brian Canfield just said actually comes into play?
I'd be happy to. So the two main types of warranty complaints that we get here in the Fraud and Consumer Protection Division are complaints about home warranties and about automobile warranties. And the automobile warranties, it's not usually the manufacturer's warranty that you get when you get a new car. This is the warranties through third-party companies. Now, we do get some with new cars, and we do get also a variety of other complaints. But since we don't want this presentation to be 4 hours, we're just, these are the two biggest ones. And they're also two of the most common that people get. Now, within those, we tend to see three major sort of types of complaints. And the three are that the repair or the replacement is something that's just not covered, and they think that it's going to be covered, that the consumer was under the impression, rightly or wrongly, that something would be covered, and it's not. That the repair or replacement is just taking too long to do, that somebody's car isn't working and they need it fixed and they want it fixed now because they need their car, and the repairs are dragging out and dragging out. And the last one, and this one is not quite as common as the other two, is that the repair or the replacement just isn't getting done properly, or it was done poorly, and that the repair work just isn't up to the level that it should be. Now, one thing, and I know Pat's going to discuss this more later, is that you have to be really careful about what's in the contract. So what I want to show you, these are real things from real complaints. And the first one here, and I do have to apologize, I couldn't find the actual language, but we had a complaint with a consumer who had a problem with their car, and the warranty said that the consumer needed to pay for any sort of diagnostic work to find out what the problem was, and that if the problem was something covered, then they would both the repair would be covered and the charge for that diagnostic work would be reimbursed. But the result of that, because there was an engine problem, is that the owner of the car was going to have to pay $1,800, which she didn't have, just to find out what the problem was. And that's what was in the contract. And she didn't realize it when she signed it. And so some things like that, they can seem really innocuous, but you got to be really careful. Another example, and this is from a home warranty contract, said that the company is not responsible or liable for any delay in service or failure to provide service caused by conditions beyond their control, which is sort of a fancy way of saying that we know your heat's been out for 4 weeks and we haven't been able to get a repair person out, but that's not really our problem. And I'm oversimplifying that a bit, but that was basically the position that the company took, was that we are trying to get a repair person and we can't, and too bad that it's cold out. Another example, and they get a bit worse, is this one. We are not responsible for any damages that result from a service contractor's service, delay in providing service, or failure to provide service. We are not liable for any damages, whether caused by negligence or any other cause. You agree to waive any and all claims for such damages, including the negligent, tortuous, and or unlawful acts or omissions of any independent service contractor, which is the company basically saying, when we send somebody to your house, we have no responsibility for what happens once they get there. Also, they don't understand the difference between the words tortuous and tortious, which is not at all relevant to anything, but I'm a bit of a grammar nerd, so you get to hear about that too. And lastly, and this is my absolute personal favorite, of anything we have seen in a consumer contract is as follows. And we have seen this in more than one consumer contract. The company reserves the right to revise this agreement at any time, and you are considered to be apprised of and bound by any changes. This literally means that they can go and change the contract whenever they want, and whatever they change it to, you're saying you're fine with. Now, I do want to point out that if something like this were to end up in court, it seems unlikely that a court would let this go for a variety of reasons, which are more complicated than we're going to get into here. So it's not clear that they would actually get away with this, but they put it in there because they think they can. And so you really need to be careful. And if a company has something like this in there, you want to think twice about doing business with a company that thinks this is okay. Once you sign something, having to, on the back end, then say, well, I know this is what it says, but that's not enforceable, is a lot harder than just not getting into a situation. And with that in mind.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue to Special Investigator Malone to provide some practical advice for folks who are considering getting a warranty or have a warranty. Pat, what can you tell us about your experience in talking to some consumers?
Yeah, one of the things is, if you have a complaint and it does come into the Department of Justice, you file a complaint and it makes it down to me. It's assigned to me. I'm a special investigator. It's also assigned to one of the deputies and to a paralegal. And one of the things I can say, I know that we talk a lot and you hear a lot of things about companies, is that there are a lot of very good companies out there. So some of the stuff we're saying, we're not going to tell you that everybody's trying to rip you off. Just through experience, these are the things that we can give you some advice on that really will help you. And one of them, don't rush. You're going to have that person, however they contact you, whether they're calling you by the phone, knocking on your door, email, and you end up calling them. It seems as if all the salespeople want you to rush, make a decision right away. You're in control of it, and don't let them rush you. When you decide that you want to go with this company, get a copy of the contract before you sign anything on their, on their phone, on their, and on their computer that they're going to bring into your house. You want to actually see that actual contract. Some of the complaints I've had when it's come to me and I start reaching out, talking to the people, and I reach out to the companies, a lot of times the first thing they do, they'll send me the contract that the consumer signed, saying that they understood and that they read the contract. In reality, I've talked to a lot of consumers that had flat out didn't read the contract at all. They sent their money, signed up for everything, and then waited for the company to send them a copy of the contract. And I'm going to tell you the best thing to do is to get that beforehand and read, particularly the fine print. If you don't understand something, ask them to explain it to you. What does this mean down here? You're in no rush. Make sure when you do sign it, make sure that the price that they quoted you in the sales pitch is the same thing that's on the contract. Some of the things when I start investigating some of these complaints, I'll ask everybody, was it recorded? And did you have the ring, or did you audio record it? The only thing I ask you to be cautious with that is be careful. I always let somebody know before I'm going to record them. Two reasons. First of all, they know that there's a record kept of it. And if this salesperson decides to exaggerate what they're going to offer you, or the price, or how many times they're going to come out, now it's recorded also. So they're kind of going to be hesitant as far as exaggerating what their skit's going to be, or their part of the sales pitch. Some of the complaints that we have had, the sales people do an excellent job. They go through A to Z and have the person sign up for it and sign on their iPad even before they see a copy of the contract. And not only that, they tell them, hey, if you go and give us a positive review now, we're going to give you 2 extra free months of coverage on this warranty. Now, they all don't do that, but be careful when they do. once you start, if you have to use the warranty or things of that nature, I'd recommend go back and send out a review at that point of how that company is really doing. Something else to look for is automatic renewals. A lot of the times I'll sit and read through the contracts and I'm talking to the consumer filing this complaint, and they had no idea that every year this contract's going to renew itself and it's going to charge your credit card again that following year. If you don't want that on there, you have the right to tell them you don't want it and to take it off. Finally, do the research. The Better Business Bureau, get on their website, Google the company. There are a lot of different websites out there that you can rate them and leave your reviews on the different websites. Look at those, spend extra time to research them. And probably the most valuable is to talk to your family members, friends that have used this particular contractor or that had this type of work done. What steps did they go through to find the contractor to allow them to come into their house? That's probably some of the most important steps. And I tell you over and over again, I've talked to people that have said that they never saw the contract before they sent their money in and that they did not read the contract. Just take your time to do that. And that should help protect you down the road when you do need to take advantage of that warranty that you've paid your hard money for.
That sounds like great advice. Some simple things that we can all do when we are encountering some folks who are trying to sell us things with warranties. So thank you very much to our panelists today. I think this has been a very informative presentation. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you at the next one.